It all started when a police K-9 suddenly froze beside an abandoned well that everyone else had overlooked. The officers thought it was nothing, just old stones and water long forgotten. But the dog refused to move, his growls echoing in the silence, locking everyone's eyes on the darkness below. Moments later, something hidden for years finally came to light. And what they pulled from the bottom left the entire crowd speechless. So the real question is, why did the K-9 stop there, and what was buried beneath all along? Here's the full story. But before we roll into it, drop your dog's name in the comments and hit that subscribe button. The search began like countless others before it, methodical, quiet, and tense. The rural countryside stretched far with scattered farmhouses, tall grass, and winding dirt paths that had seen little activity for years. Police units had been dispatched after a local report came in of a missing child who had not returned home after sunset. Officers searched barns, sheds, and cornfields. Every inch of land seemed to be combed, yet nothing surfaced. But it was the K-9 unit that shifted the atmosphere. Rex, a trained police dog with years of service, moved with sharp precision, nose glued to the ground, ears flicking with every faint sound in the wind. His handler kept a steady pace behind him, trusting Rex's instincts more than anything else. The dog followed a faint trail across an abandoned farmland, one that most officers believed led to nowhere. At the far edge of the field, half hidden by overgrowth, stood an old stone well, unused, weathered, its rim cracked and covered in moss. Most of the officers had passed it without a second thought, yet Rex stopped cold at its side. He froze, every muscle tense, hackles raised. A low growl rumbled deep in his throat, and then he barked sharply, again and again, his gaze locked on the darkness within the well. The sudden intensity made everyone uneasy. Was it simply an animal scent drifting from the depths, or something more? The handler tried to redirect Rex, but the dog refused to move an inch. His paws dug into the dirt, his entire body rigid. Something had rooted him to that very spot, and it was clear he would not be leaving. Questions rose among the officers. Why would a dog trained in tracking missing persons suddenly lock himself onto a forgotten structure? What could possibly be beneath that crumbling stone circle that held his attention so firmly? The well itself looked unremarkable, just another relic of land that had been abandoned for decades. Its stones were cracked, the rope and bucket long gone, and the wood that once supported its pulley system had rotted away. Yet as Rex's growls filled the silence, it no longer looked harmless. It felt alive, like something was waiting below, hidden out of sight. The handler leaned over cautiously, shining his flashlight down into the pitch-black shaft. The beam disappeared into the darkness. The bottom was not visible. Only the faint smell of damp earth and stagnant air drifted upward. Rex barked louder. His claws scratched against the rim, desperate to signal what his instincts were screaming. Other officers grew restless. Some whispered about snakes, others about old wells that had been sealed after accidents. But the urgency in Rex's behavior suggested more than an animal presence. He had never been wrong before. His actions had saved lives in the past, finding lost hikers, missing seniors, and even uncovering evidence hidden by criminals. So what was it about this well that made him act as though time itself had frozen? The area was cordoned off. The decision was made to bring in a rope and secure a light source to see what might be hiding at the bottom. When the beam finally reached partway down, faint shapes began to emerge, but nothing was clear enough to explain Rex's relentless reaction. The dog's intensity only increased as hours passed. Every officer felt the pressure of time. The missing child had been gone since early afternoon. If Rex had truly found a lead, they needed answers quickly. The sound of scraping stone echoed when one officer leaned too far over the rim, loosening a chunk of rock that tumbled into the abyss. Everyone froze, listening. Seconds later, the faintest splash drifted upward. The well was not dry. That alone was troubling. If the missing child had fallen inside, survival was slim. Yet Rex's behavior hinted at something more complicated. He was not pointing at a lost scent casually. He was fighting to alert them. A memory struck one officer, a story told long ago about this very well. Some locals claimed it had been boarded up decades earlier after a farmhand had gone missing. Others spoke of families who had avoided the area entirely, claiming the well had a history tied to strange disappearances. The stories were brushed aside as folklore, but now, under Rex's sharp barks, they no longer felt like myths. What if this was not the first time someone had vanished here? The question made the team pause. Could this well be a link, not just to the missing child, but to something older, something that connected past tragedies to the present? The handler tightened his grip on Rex's leash, his own pulse quickening. They lowered a camera attached to a rope, its faint red light blinking as it descended. Every officer leaned in, waiting for the feed. The camera swung gently, its lens capturing jagged stone, dripping moss, and stretches of darkness. Then something unusual appeared. The camera caught what looked like a wooden beam wedged against the wall far down. Attached to it was fabric, faded and torn, clinging as if caught long ago. The sight made the air grow heavy. What was it doing there? Was it part of an old sealing attempt? Or had it trapped something beneath? Rex barked again, each sound more desperate than the last, his body trembling with urgency. The footage continued, reaching deeper still, and then the camera froze. The screen flickered, briefly capturing what looked like a shape unnatural, not stone, not wood, something that made every officer step back. But the signal cut before clarity came. Questions multiplied. Was it debris? Evidence of foul play? Or something worse? Rex clawed at the ground, his determination unshaken. The handler's eyes locked with his, understanding the message clear as day. Whatever was down there mattered, and it had to be uncovered before it was too late. The investigation into the well had just begun, but it was already clear this was no ordinary missing person case. The dog had unearthed a lead tied not only to the child's disappearance, but to mysteries buried for years. And somewhere beneath that cold darkness was the answer. The officers prepared ropes and harnesses for a descent. Fear rippled through the team, but so did resolve. Rex had chosen his ground, and he had never been wrong. The mystery of the well was about to be revealed. But as the first rope lowered into the pit, one haunting thought gripped everyone's mind. What if the well was hiding more than anyone could bear to see? The rope creaked as the first officer descended into the well. Every breath echoed against the damp walls, the sound swallowed by the hollow darkness. The flashlight beam cut through layers of moss and stone, illuminating shapes that seemed stranger the deeper he went. Above, Rex barked furiously, his body pacing along the rim, refusing to let his handler look away. His instincts told him what the human eyes had not yet seen. Something important, something life-changing, waited below. The officer's boots hit a wooden beam wedged against the stone, the same one the camera had picked up. Tattered fabric hung from it, soaked from years of moisture. He pulled it loose, and the faded material told a story of time long past. It looked like a child's shirt, tiny, fragile, and decades old. The well was no ordinary shaft of water. It was a graveyard of forgotten history. But then came a sound. It was faint, but it cut through the stillness. A muffled noise, a cry. The officer froze. His light darted across the bottom until it caught movement. Small, trembling, pressed against the curve of the stones. A child, alive. The missing boy, mud-streaked and terrified, clung to a beam barely above the waterline. His wide eyes squinted against the light, his lips shivering from hours of fear. Above, Rex erupted with frantic barking, his body surging forward as if demanding they move faster. The team snapped into action. Another rope was lowered, a harness secured, and the boy was pulled upward slowly, carefully, every second stretching endlessly. The handlers above reached out with shaking arms, their hearts pounding as they hoisted him free of the pit. When his feet touched solid ground, Rex rushed forward, tail wagging violently as he nuzzled the boy, licking mud and tears from his face. The child wrapped his tiny arms around the dog's neck and refused to let go. The missing child was alive because Rex had refused to move. But the well still held secrets. When the officers descended again, searching through the debris at the bottom, they uncovered more remnants, fragments of old clothing, rusted metal tools, and objects tied to reports of disappearances from decades ago. The stories whispered in the town were no myths. This well had claimed lives before, swallowing them into silence. Yet this time was different. This time, the cycle was broken. The child had survived because Rex had chosen to stop, because his instincts had screamed that this spot held more than stone and water. The dots connected, the legends of lost people, the strange beam with fabric, the urgency in Rex's growls. The well had always been a place of tragedy, but now it had become the place where life triumphed. As dawn broke across the horizon, the boy was wrapped in a blanket, reunited with his weeping family. Officers watched in silence, the weight of the night pressing on them, but also the relief of resolution. And Rex sat proudly beside his handler, calm now, his mission complete. Days later at the town square, the community gathered. The story had spread like fire, how a police dog had stopped cold beside a forgotten well, refusing to move until the truth was pulled from the shadows. How he had saved a boy's life when time was running out. The police chief stepped forward with a small box in hand. The crowd fell silent. Rex's handler knelt beside him, holding his collar steady. From the box came a medal gleaming under the morning sun. It was clipped to Rex's harness, a symbol of courage, loyalty, and a bond that could not be explained by logic alone. The cheers that followed shook the square. The boy's family stood nearby, tears still shining, their child alive because of the canine who trusted his instincts. Rex sat tall, chest out, ears high. He had found what no one else could. He had given hope where there was none, and now he wore his medal with pride, forever remembered as the dog who stopped at the old well and changed everything. Stories like this show how one moment can change everything, and you never know what's coming next. Don't miss out on the next twist. Hit like, subscribe, and be the first to see how deep the next story really goes.